Hi guys, and welcome back to The Social Tune. And today, as promised, we are going to be doing a brand new Q&A. It's kind of fitting considering one, I've been gone for a while, and two, this is my birthday month. We're back in November, guys. I forgot to mention that last time. But yeah, November last year, I kind of had this whole theme of doing reviews and lists that I really wanted to do. This year, obviously, I left a little bit late, but there is still a lot that I want to get to. But first of all, let's tackle your questions, starting with one that was asked by so many of you. What do you think of 2018 in music? Now, obviously, I'll be covering this in a little bit more detail at the end of this year when I do my year-end lists for, the various categories that I want to talk about. But overall, I would say 2018 has been a bit of a weirdly transitional year for music. Not that much has really struck me and stuck with me like it has the past 3 or 4 years, really. But at the same time, I wouldn't say it's bad. In terms of the top 40 and the Hot 100 as a whole, I think the problem is that at the beginning of this year, I said that it was kind of like 2014 in the sense that everything was very static and you kept just having the same 10 in the top 10, which is why the year felt so slow. This year was weird because it started off like that, where everything felt very slow, and then there was just a huge surge of hits, and we almost got too many songs in the top 40 this year. If you actually were to list the number of songs that entered the top 40 this year, you would be amazed at how many there are, and so many of them had such little staying power. It's actually really hard for me to predict this year more than any other what will be a hit and what won't, purely because it's really hard to keep track of just how many songs made it into the top 40 and how long so many of them stayed there, and so many of which fell out as well. So yeah, there's just been a lot of music, and kind of too much in a way, and a lot of it isn't that amazing. There hasn't been that one big hit that really defined my year like Praying or Uptown Funk have been in the past, even though 2017 had quite a few. But I would say, in terms of my ranking, I will talk about this more later on in the video, but I wouldn't say it's a horrendous year, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a good one. Let's just leave it at that. Thomas Memories Central asks, 1, are you open to multiple song reviews and not just songs in the top 40, but perhaps bigger hits from other countries? That's kind of 2 questions in one, but okay. For the first part, I have actually done multiple song reviews in one review. My first ever track review was for Shape of You and Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran, so sure, I'm open to those. As for the reviewing songs outside of the top 40 though, here's the thing. I know that in a way it's an untapped market in many ways. I know some people do, obviously, but fewer people talk about songs outside of the Billboard top 20 or so. Here's the thing. I would consider it, but the thing is, this is a way to somewhat impose limitations on myself. It's why I always make my top 10 lists modeled on the year-end Hot 100, so I have a fixed model to work off of, so that, I don't get just drowned and swamped in just the tons of music out there. There's so much music being produced every single day, and this is just some way for me to narrow it down slightly and keep it a little bit simpler. 2, do you find it hard to read certain comments on your videos because of select people saying the same annoyances repeatedly? Okay, I can kind of see which people you might be pointing fingers at, and honestly, no. To me, it's kind of nice to see a returning subscriber on each and every one of my videos, and if they repeat themselves a lot, that's their prerogative, to be honest. To be fair, before I had this channel, I would go on other people's channels and just spew my own opinion everywhere, even when it wasn't welcome. That's why I set up this channel to begin with. So no, I don't really mind all that much, to be honest. It's why I barely ever delete comments for that same reason. And 3, how's it feel changing rooms for several videos? Okay, this place, just so you know, it's the same place. I didn't move house again. I'm just in a different room because the person I'm living with was nice enough to just give me this room to film in for this particular video. But with that said, I have looked back And in the past year, so between September of 2017 to September of 2018, I have lived in 5 places. And you can find videos for all of them on this channel, which is kind of amazing. So it's been exhausting. It's been a whirlwind, but I can safely say that this is probably somewhere I'm going to stay long term. So that's a relief, at least. Next up, the amazingly named Spill the Tea says, what year-end list do you plan on doing at the end of this year? And the answer to that is the usual ones. I want to do the top 10 best and worst hits of the year. I want to do the worst albums of the year, the best albums of the year, and the top 50 songs of this year. Because even though it may seem that I've just been gone and out of the music scene entirely, I've listened to a fair amount of music this year. Not as much as the past 2 years, but I never stopped listening to new albums while I was away. So don't worry about that. Black Bear Rocks, you are so wrong, asks, how do you feel about the new Marianas Trench album supposedly having a paranormal theme? I am so excited, and I think it makes perfect sense as well. The band, after all, have always had a love of the 80s, and there's a lot of very big, cheesy 80s movies that focus on the paranormal. So I think it makes perfect sense, and as someone who loves the paranormal and especially Marianas Trench, I cannot wait to hear what they do with it. Richard D asks, what are your favorite artists of all time? Well, obviously, as I just said, there's my favorite band of all time, Marianas Trench. There's so many acts in music that I adore, though. So who else is there? There's the Beatles, there's more recently Laurie McKenna, Jason Isbell. More classically from my childhood, you have Fleetwood Mac, Billy Joel. There's so many artists that I absolutely adore out there. But top of the top are definitely Marianas Trench. The Quotable Psychic asks, do you have plans to bring back Record Roundup in the new year? Yes, but in a slightly different format, which I will be discussing at some point later on in this video. Sam Wise, good to see you back. Thanks, buddy. Here are my questions. What is your favorite TV show or movie? Favorite TV show? God, that is tricky. In terms of all time, honestly, I adore One Piece. I know that's an anime, but technically it's on TV, so don't hate me. The only other one that springs to mind is a Netflix show, and that's BoJack Horseman, which I love so much. But live action TV shows, I don't know, man. There's so many, but it's hard to narrow it down to just one. So I'll just say off the top of my head, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. 2, do you think there will be a new series on your channel where you rank the albums of a band or artist from worst to best? No, for a couple of reasons. 1, ARTV Reviews is killing it at that. And 2, I don't really think I want to introduce any new series on my channel for, again, reasons that I will be discussing towards the end of this video. And 3, did you hear about XXXTentacion's death? And if so, what are your thoughts? Well, obviously, my first thoughts would be, am I glad he's dead? Of course I'm not. I've talked negatively about him on this channel before, but I wouldn't wish death upon the kid. You know, he's said and done some really bad things, allegedly. The thing I hated most about him was his music, and the fact that so many people gave him so much credit for it. But at the same time, I can't deny that his music had an effect on people. Seeing just how many people came out in support of him after he died, and seeing just how many people connected with his music was definitely interesting, because I certainly don't connect with it. I still think it's garbage, to be honest. Yeah, again, I'm not gonna say his music shows an attitude that I like, but again, it's tragic when anybody dies, and in this case, it's no exception. Niels Music Reviews asks, here are my questions for the Q&A. 1, is that 21 Guns in the background? Yes, a couple of you spotted that, and it was obviously a hint to my Best of 2009 video coming out. And 2, what do you think of Eurovision? Eurovision is always something that's been in my orbit, because obviously growing up in Belgium, it would have to be, but I've never really watched it or got into it at all. I have certain friends who are really into it though, so I have been telling them that I would try and get into it either next Eurovision or the one after or something, and as part of that go back and listen to all of the classics, but it's just a lot. There's such a vast history to the Eurovision at this point that it's a little bit daunting, but yeah, Do I have a problem with the Eurovision? No. Does it interest me? Not really, but this time next year, I may be a fan. Man in the Wall asks, if you were to do a top 10 of the 1960s or 1970s, what years would you start with? For the 1970s, probably 1970. I think that's a year that more people should talk about, and it's a very interesting time for rock music, in my opinion. But 1960s, I've actually already written a top 10 best songs list for the 1960s. I'm not going to say anything more for now, but just know that that will be showing up at some point in the not too distant future. And 2, favorite songs by each of these bands. The Beatles, oh god, so many. I'm just going to say Nowhere Man off the top of my head. Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. The Rolling Stones, again, so many. Start Me Up. The Who, Baba O'Reilly. And Creedence Clearwater Revival, honestly, I would need to listen to them a lot more in order to give you a fixed decision on that. And as for your third question about retrospective rambles, this wasn't the place to post this question, but at the same time, I will take your 2 recommendations, Wherever You Will Go by The Calling and Hate Me by Blue October, under consideration. James O'Rear asks, great to see one of my favorite music critics back. Aw, bless. That sounded so sarcastic. As far as your top 10s go, are there any songs that you regret putting so high on the list or omitting from the list completely? In other words, are there any songs that have significantly struck or grown on you? I mean, there's a couple, but not that many. I think the obvious one for me is Charlie Puth's Marvin Gaye. I really wish I'd placed that higher on my worst list. But no, for the most part, I'm pretty happy with my top 10 lists, to be perfectly honest with you. Jared Last Name asks, what are your thoughts on Dream Theater or Rush? Again, Rush is a band that I haven't really ever looked into in detail, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. But Dream Theater, I love. I think they have an epic scope. They have so much ambition. They put so much time and effort into their music. Even the newer stuff, which admittedly isn't as good, because, you know, it's cleaner, it's more polished, it doesn't quite have the same oomph to it. It's still incredible just how much, you know, just how ambitious each of their projects is. So yeah, as a fan of progressive, symphonic, and power metal, I can definitely jam with Dream Theater. Discs131 asks, are there any songs you like from artists you dislike? Well, obviously, apart from the top 10 best Chris Brown songs that I made a while back, I'm going to say for this, I'm just going to go with an easy one and say Black Beatles by Ray Shrimmer. That's a song that I honestly think is really, really good. It almost made my best list for that year, despite the fact that it's Ray Shrimmer. So yeah, that's a weird dichotomy right there. House and Wort asks, 1, when do you think you'll ever get around to making the best list for 1999? Come on, we all know I Want It That Way is going to top that list. I do want to do that at some point in the near future, probably within the next year. But as for I Want It That Way topping it, you may be surprised. I'm just saying, although you will definitely see that somewhere on the list, I can promise you that. And 2, this one isn't really for the Q&A, but do you know that when you made your worst and best lists for 2002, a long time ago, you had Hero by Enrique Iglesias as a dishonorable mention on the former? I do remember. Do you know that that one's actually a leftover from the 2001 year-end list? One second. Okay, it turns out, yeah, he's right. Hero by Enrique Iglesias, which was one of my dishonorable mentions, came out the year before. So I'm going to go back to that earlier question to say, are there any songs that I regret putting on my best and worst lists? Yes, I regret putting Enrique Iglesias' Hero in my dishonorable mentions for 2002 when it wasn't even fucking eligible. And also, congratulations, House and Wort, on turning 23 very soon. Yay, we share a birthday month. You're cool. All the rest of you guys who weren't born in November suck. But with that said, please keep watching. Hey there, Hey there, the Lila, that is amazing, says, what is your favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers song? Also glad you're back. Thank you, and thank you for giving me the blessing of your name. Californication, obviously. Danny California's up there as well. Although I will say, Dark Necessities from their most recent album, it's really great. Like, I put it on my top 50 songs of 2016, but it's only grown on me since then. It really is a fantastic song. So go listen to those three if you're going to listen to any Red Hot Chili Peppers songs, in my opinion. Cat DM says, are you going to make / do you plan on making a best of 2006 list? Yes, basically any year-end Hot 100 best or worst top 10 list that you can picture that I haven't done yet, I will probably do at some point in the future. At least I'm planning on doing at some point in the future. Which actually brings us to WJ asking, 1, do you plan on making a worst songs of 1989 list? Thank you for bringing that up. I do want to. As some of you may have noticed, my best of 1989 list was taken down because Sony Music Entertainment sucked balls. But yeah, I'm hoping to maybe re-upload that in future, and also do a worst of 1989 list at some point. And 2, what's your favorite and least favorite song you've covered in your best or worst list so far? That's tough. I would say for the best, it would either be Love Song by Sarah Bareilles or All of the Lights by Kanye West, and for the worst, yeah, Birthday Cake Remix by Rihanna and Chris Brown, easily. Evanescence TV asks, what are your thoughts on High Hopes by Panic at the Disco? It's alright. I mean, I'll be talking more on the album soon, trust me, but it's basically what Panic at the Disco has become, which is loud, bombastic, and high-pitched. It's fine, it doesn't offend me, it can be a tad annoying, I'm not gonna lie, but, you know, whatever. Kumarai Fang asks, hey Kumarai, here's a question I'm meaning to ask. What are some of your pet peeves in music? I mean, the obvious one is I'm not a fan of repetition in music, but there are a couple of others. Here's a big thing I'm not a fan of. It's drum machines, and specifically drum machines when they're misused, which is most of the time. People always seem to either have drum machines overpower everything else in the mix, or rather than letting it act as a foundation, they'll just put it in the background, which means you just have this really annoying tapping that persists throughout the entire track. A prime example of this is Turning Me On by Kerry Hilson. I always forget her name. But anyway, that is a prime example. Just that tapping tinny beat in the background of that entire song drives me insane. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. I'm Just There, the professional Jeffy hater, asks, welcome back. My questions: 1, PewDiePie or T-Series? I've heard of this, but I don't know enough about it, so I'm just gonna say PewDiePie because I like PewDiePie. 2, what do you think of YouTuber songs? It's a very mixed bag, because on the one hand you have Ninja Sex Party, and on the other hand you have Jake Paul, so I think they kind of cancel each other out, to be honest. 3, favorite movie or video game soundtrack? I was thinking about this. I would say I really like the Star Wars soundtrack, and I particularly mean the prequels. Say what you will about the prequels, they're definitely not better than the original, but I will say the music is really, really damn good. The score there is just incredible. And I'm also a big fan of the Inception soundtrack with Hans Zimmer. Talking about video game soundtracks, I don't really play enough video games to really be able to pick one. So I'm gonna pick an easy one and say Witcher 3 is supposed to have a good soundtrack, right? And 4, have you seen the Bohemian Rhapsody? And if so, your thoughts. I loved it. I loved that movie. A lot of people told me it was going to be a very good film with a great soundtrack, but I actually thought it was phenomenal. I thought the acting was great. I thought the story was great. The pacing is something that's not going to be for everyone, but for me, especially the final 20 minutes or so are wonderful. I just love it. Was so easy for me to sit through it. I know that sounds like an odd thing to say, but if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I mean. You know what happens at the end. But yeah, I love the movie. I know it's not going to be for everyone. I know that it's kind of baiting in a sense. It's kind of critic baity for music critics, but I really did love it, and I sincerely hope it wins a lot of acclaim and awards, because it definitely deserves it, in my humble opinion. Joseph Kavanagh asks, have you ever been into professional wrestling? No, not even a little. I'm interested in the theatrical side of it, which is why the last couple of years has been at least interesting to watch, but other than that, No, sorry, buddy. Are you into memes? And if so, what is your favorite meme of 2018? Honestly, again, no. I have friends who send me memes, and some of those are funny, some of them are not. But if you asked me for a meme of 2018, I would have no idea. So, sorry, that's another question I can't really answer. What is your favorite food? I can answer this question. My favorite food is chili con carne, at least for now. That might change in a couple of weeks or so, due to me just changing my mind. But chili con carne is definitely great. Alan Lewis asks, here are my questions. What made you join YouTube? I've already answered that in my previous Q&A. Just watch that, please, because I don't want to get into it again. Who are your influences? Again, same thing. What are your thoughts on 2018 music when it comes to the top 10 and the top 40? I answered that at the beginning of this video. And what are your favorite new artists of 2018? Now, that's a question I do want to answer. Although I will say it's a little hard to pick who. There weren't that many new artists that I checked out in 2018. There were a couple who had been around for a while whom I checked out retrospectively. But I think the most recent ones, at least in terms of how long they've been working, No Name, which is a rapper that many of you would have probably heard of this year because of her fantastic album Room 25. She was just a revelation this year, which I'm really glad I looked into. And another one, Ray Morris. Ray Morris from the UK, who made a wonderful pop album, synth pop album this year called Someone Out There. Definitely check that out. It is one of the most beautiful and refined releases of this year by far. Ruby Rosdill asks, have you considered making lists other than year-end lists, for example, top 10 songs by one of your favorite artists or top 10 about certain topics? Yes, I have. I've wanted to do this for a while. It really kills me that my only example of this, really, apart from the almost hits of the year or stuff like that, or underrated hits, the only top 10 I have for a particular artist is for Chris Brown, and I hate that. So yeah, I definitely want to get around to that at some point, probably for a band I'm really into, like Marianas Trench. So yeah, that'll probably come out at some point. Carlos the Penguin 02. What are your thoughts on the current charts? The reason I put this in is because the current charts is a bit different from 2018 as a whole, because right now, and this actually ties into my next question by Ryan Kong, I expect people have been asking you your thoughts on the state of music in 2018, but just out of curiosity, how do you feel about the top 20 in this Hot 100 right now being shared by 5 Seconds of Summer, Bastille frontman Dan Smith, Brendan Urie, and Imagine Dragons all at the same time? It's an interesting one, because on the one hand, am I a fan of any of these people? All of them, to varying extents, are either or good, in my opinion. None of them really rise beyond just plain good or decent. With that said, what they represent is very interesting, because in 2018, it has been just flooded with hip-hop. Hip-hop has really been incredibly dominant this year because of streaming rules and so on. This influx of pop rock, I guess you could call it, coming in is really interesting and really refreshing, just in and of itself. And I'm very curious to see if this will have a big effect on 2019, just in terms of whether we're going to see more of a shift towards pop music like we did towards the end of the 2000s. Also, Ryan Kong had the question, what are your thoughts on The Greatest Showman Reimagined album coming out on November 16th? I haven't seen The Greatest Showman. I've listened to the soundtrack and didn't really care for it all that much. So, you know, do I care that they're re-releasing the soundtrack reimagined? Not really, to be perfectly honest. Saraz Chelvam says, what YouTube channels do you follow? Do you take inspiration from any other YouTubers for your preparation style? I follow a lot of people. There's a couple of old people from Channel Awesome that I still follow. There is Smosh. I still watch Smosh, all of their channels. I'm not lying. I still find some joy in them, I'm not going to lie. Who else am I subscribed to before that sinks in too much? Jack's Films. I'm subscribed to Jack's Films. I get street cred for that. How It Should Have Ended. What else am I subscribed to? There's a couple of French channels that I'm subscribed to that you wouldn't have heard of. And a ton of music critics. So that more or less sums that up. LKJHGF Studios says, What do you use for editing? Windows Movie Maker. I am not kidding. I do all of my videos on Windows Movie Maker, except for the retrospective rambles, which I just do on an app on my phone. Although with that said, I personally think I do quite a bit, considering what a crappy tool I'm working with. But as for why I haven't gotten a better setup for editing videos, honestly, I'm too lazy. The simple ones are too expensive, and the free ones I just cannot be bothered with, to be perfectly frank with you. Josh Rule asks, what is your favorite year for music of all time? To which I would say 1984. I think that's a pretty safe bet. Ellie Sari asks, since you said Mary Poppins is your favorite Disney movie, are you looking forward to Mary Poppins Returns? No, I'm not. To me, it feels like taking something that's perfect and just trying to add on to it to capitalize off of it, because that's why they're doing it. It's just to capitalize off of the magic of the original. So am I excited? No. Do I hope it's good? I still do. I'm still hoping against hope that it's good, although I'm not a big fan of the trailers. But anyway, what do you think about the live-action remakes / sequels like Beauty and the Beast, Christopher Robin, etc.? They've been a mixed bag for me. I haven't absolutely loathed any of them. I wasn't a fan of Beauty and the Beast, but I did like The Jungle Book. And also, I haven't seen the newer Christopher Robin film with Ewan McGregor, but I did see the Goodbye Christopher Robin film that was released either last year or the year before, and that was very good, apart from a bit of a botched ending. So yeah, mixed bag. Again, they're just really doing it for the money, if I'm being honest, but they could be worse, I suppose. And as for the Disney sequels, I've seen some I like, and I've seen a lot that I dislike. And also, what is your favorite animated Disney movie? Ooh, that is tough. I like a lot of them, so picking just one is difficult. If I'm going animated, like hand-drawn animation, I'm just gonna say the original Beauty and the Beast, because that's just an easy answer. Or Aladdin. I really like Aladdin. I think that holds up very well. And as for the kind of more CG, computer-generated animation, I love Tangled. Tangled is amazing. And oh, don't even get me started on Pixar, because then we'll be here forever. Foxy Lover, that's someone who must have loved She-Wolf, asks, one, is there a band / artist that you find to be completely overrated? Well, might as well finally admit to this. I'm not a huge fan of Panic! At the Disco. I mentioned them several times in this video, but I really can't get into them. I tried to recently. I went back and tried to get into their discography in detail, and I just couldn't. It just doesn't appeal to me. So sorry, Panic! At the Disco fans. I know that that's a very sore spot for a lot of you, but it's just not for me. I love 21 Pilots. I love Fall Out Boy. I love, I don't know, My Chemical Romance are fine. I love Green Day. But yeah, I know that some of those bands have nothing to do with anything, but I'm not a big Panic! At the Disco fan. Oh, and don't even get me started on some of the other bands. Foo Fighters, so overrated. Radiohead, God. I'm going to stop now. 2. What is your opinion on Snow White and the Seven Clever Boys? Again, I don't play video games, so I had to look this up, and never played it, never will play it, but it looks terrifying, if that's what you want me to say. And 3, have you considered doing a top 10 favorite / least favorite bands / artists lists? I've always wanted to see someone make a list of that sort. I wanted to as well, doing, ranking my favorite artists and my least favorite artists. But the problem is, I'm still discovering myself musically. I know that sounds really pretentious, but the thing is, there's still so much that I need to check out and listen to before I can really make an informed decision on that. So hopefully I will do it at some point in the future, but not right now. Critica77Y asks, what are some of the worst Christmas songs you ever heard and some of the best? I honestly like Christmas music for the most part, but there's always a couple of stinkers out there. Baby It's Cold Outside is obviously that's a bad one. Another bad one is I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas, and there are a couple of other ones. As for the best, though, I'm a big fan of the classics. I'm not gonna lie, I still like listening to Christmas music. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, Jingle Bells Rock, a lot of rocking ones now I think about it. Although one that not many people will mention that I still stand by as a Christmas song is A Christmas Fucking Miracle by Run the Jewels. That one you can take to the bank. Andrew Forsyth, hey buddy, asks, would you consider doing a best or worst list of the decade for the 2000s? Nobody has done it, and I think it would be interesting. I'm pretty sure that Ethan with the discount suit and fedora has already done that, and to be fair, they are very good videos. But for the 2010s, yes, I've considered it, so that might be happening at the end of 2019 at some point. Who knows? Jill Talks Music 1 asks, would you consider retrospectively doing a best and worst lists for albums for past years, for example, the year 2000? I have considered it, but the more I thought about it, the more logistically it just doesn't seem really either fair or possible, because it would involve me having to go back and listen to enough albums from each of those years to be able to compile a top 10 or whatever list. And one, it wouldn't really feel completely genuine because I wouldn't have the time to listen to enough releases from every single year for it to feel completely honest, the final top 10, because I would just know there'd be so many albums that I missed. And two, if I did take the time to check out maybe over 100 albums from each of those years, I would fall behind so much on not just the music from this current year, but just the music that I've been trying to catch up on. I'm just a little late to the punch, I suppose. If I'd started listening to music a bit earlier, I would consider it, but considering just the situation I'm in now, no, sorry about that. And two, on the topic of Irish music, what are your thoughts on the shoegaze band My Bloody Valentine? I do not listen to enough Irish music, and I've never listened to My Bloody Valentine, but I will make sure to do so right after filming this video. Emperor of Rome says, as far as your Q&A is concerned, I tried to think of interesting questions that other people wouldn't think to ask. So what was the controversy with Rose Muller? I'm gonna say this one final time. Not for me to say. Here's the thing, I was barely involved. I was not even a third party. I was basically just a bystander. I wasn't really involved. I had reasons for deleting that video that I tried to explain in that video, but as for what actually happened, it's just not for me to talk about. I'm sure that there are other people out there who could give you more information about it, but if they don't want to, then that's entirely up to them. So sorry, but I'm not going to talk about that anymore. What reviewing publication do you regularly disagree with most? Pitchfork. Ugh. I have so many problems with Pitchfork. The way they review albums, the way that they will change their minds on albums where they were really harsh on them, and then years later when the album's considered a classic, they'll make a new review for it. I have so many disagreements with Pitchfork. What artist/band's music has had the most negative impact on music in general? It really depends who you ask. Some would argue Chicago for the fact that they basically popularized easy listening adult alternative in the mid to late 80s and then into the 90s. But to be honest, I have a real bone to pick with, and this may surprise some of you, Soulja Boy, because as far as I can tell, and I may be wrong on this, Soulja Boy seems to be what really set off and popularized ringtone rap, which then kind of evolved into basic repetitive bling rap, which then evolved into mumble rap, where you didn't even need to understand the words because you knew what they were bragging about because of the bling rap era. And then finally that's evolved into this emo rap that we have today, which is trying to basically put a new spin and work against all of the happy-go-lucky mumble rappers by just being utterly miserable and depressing. And four, will you do earlier decades like the 60s and the 70s when you run out of top 10 lists for the 80s, 90s, and 2000s? Yes, like I've said, I'll definitely be doing top 10 lists for the 60s, the 70s, the 80s I'm planning to get back to at some point, the 90s I'm planning to get back to at some point, and the next top 10 that I release will possibly be for a year in the 2000s. I'm still making up my mind about that. I'll come back to you. Taffin Nadir says, just like the last Q&A, I have a bunch of questions. Welcome back. One, which genre/genres do you feel you need to explore way more, and why haven't you gotten into them as much? Most of all, there's metal and EDM. Honestly, electronic music in general. Metal, it's because it was one of those genres that as a kid and really as a young teenager, it just never appealed to me. It just sounded like loud noise, and it's only later on in life that I've come to appreciate the technicality of the guitar playing and some of the lyrics even. But I'm still not completely 100% on all subgenres in metal, and there are still that give me some grief. And as for electronic music, honestly, electronic music can be absolutely beautiful and hypnotizing, but I find it very hard to really commit a song to memory unless I have something more like lyrics to grab onto, and a lot of electronic music doesn't have that. So those are two genres that I'm hoping to explore more and more and find more gems within each of them. Two, I know how much you love music from the 80s, and so do I, because who doesn't really? But what are some of your favorite acts from that decade? Ooh, Fleetwood Mac was the 80s, right? I'm not getting that wrong. I don't care. I'm going to say Fleetwood Mac. I'm also going to say David Bowie. I'm also going to say Guns N' Roses. And I'm going to leave it at that because that's all I can think of right off the top of my head. And yes, I said Guns N' Roses. Don't at me. What are your opinions on Blondie, The Cure, and Fleetwood Mac? And what are some of your favorite songs by them? Big fan of Blondie. Love Call Me. Love Heart of Glass. So a lot of her big hits I'm a huge fan of. The Cure, I haven't really listened to enough songs by them to really be able to give you a full opinion on them, and that's also why I'm not going to name any favorite songs by them right now. But Fleetwood Mac, I said this earlier, they're one of my favorite acts in music, period. So many amazing songs. The Chain, Tusk, Rhiannon, Landslide, so many. 5, God, you have a lot of questions. What is your opinion on the newest songs by the Wombats and the Fratellis, which is Bee Sting and Oceans, you didn't note it here, but it came out the other day, and Let's Go, respectively. So let me say, first of all, I'm a big fan of both these bands, but it's true I only got into the Fratellis this year, so I'm still getting to know them, but I'm a big fan of a lot of their music. I thought that Let's Go was okay. It felt like kind of a lesser cut from In Your Own Sweet Time, in my opinion, or maybe a bonus track. I don't know. Maybe if it is part of an album or an EP later on down the road, it'll kind of grow on me more in the context of that work. But for now, it's just kind of so-so. But I loved both Oceans and Bee Sting. I really wish that those songs had been on Beautiful People Will Ruin Your Life, because holy God, especially Bee Sting is just fantastic. I'm not going to say that I like either of them as much as my favorite track off of Beautiful People Will Ruin Your Life, but trust me, I'll be talking more about that some point in the future. And 6, what did you dress up for Halloween this year? Okay, if I have a picture, I will put it on screen now. Okay, and if you're not sure what that is, here's a picture of what I was trying to dress as. And now you've probably all realized that I'm a huge geek, but those of you that recognized it are hopefully squeeing in delight. MCamman619 says, I sort of have a few questions. 1, what is your favorite Bee Gees and Backstreet Boys song? If I were to take a long guess, it would be both Staying Alive and I Want It That Way. I mean, if you're going to answer your own question, why even ask it? 2, where would you rank each year of the 2010s musically from worst to best? Ooh, that is a tough one, just to be asked right off the bat. I'd say bottom of the list would definitely be 2016. I still stand by that. 2018, 2010, 2017, I may want to redo this, 2013, 2015, 2012, and 2011. Have I missed anything? 2014. I'm just going to slot 2014 right above 2013. There you go. 3, do you like to cook? Yes, I do like to cook. I've been trying to get into it recently, and boy, cooking for one is hard. But yeah, I was getting into this habit of getting home after work, realizing I just had way too much time and that I didn't really feel like filming back then. So, how to use up all this time? Why not actually cook a decent meal, right? 4, what is your favorite book, movie, or video game? Ooh, that is tricky. Book, I don't really have a favorite book. If I had to pick one, it would probably be Goodnight, Mr. Tom by whoever the author was. But my favorite series of books is probably The Power of Five by Anthony Horowitz. I know it's technically a teen series, but it's not like teen romance or anything. It's just amazing. If you haven't checked out Power of Five by Anthony Horowitz, some of you may know him better for his work on the Alex Rider series, but Power of Five is just next level. Trust me on that. Movie, my favorite movie of all time is Whiplash. I will stand by that. It was either from 2013 or 2014, but I adore that movie. Everything about it. And favorite video game, again, I haven't really played that many video games, but if there's one that I have loved playing, I still love playing to this day and will never say no to playing, Super Smash Brothers. I know that that's a really, really cop-out answer, but yeah, really any of the Super Smash Brothers, especially Super Smash Brothers Brawl, I absolutely adore, and I'm not great at, I'm gonna admit, at least not compared to some people online. So if you think you can beat me, you probably can. And 5, what would you say is your biggest passion besides music? Theater, acting. I've said this in a past video, but yeah, I've been into acting since I was about 6, and I love it, and I want to be an actor. That's kind of the ideal end goal for me. But with that said, my career is slowly taking steps. Without saying too much, I got a new job today, which is amazing. And hopefully that'll take my career in a positive direction. And finally, happy belated birthday for November the 6th. Good on you, man, and welcome to the cool gang. Nick Cruz, there you are, asks my 2 questions. 1, have you ever been to a musical concert for one of your favorite musical artists? Yes, I have. I have been to a couple of my favorite artists. I went to see Hozier, which was amazing. This is like 2 or 3 years ago at this point. And that was an incredible concert. I've seen Kendrick Lamar live, which is just an experience in and of itself. But my favorite concert that I've been to, I've talked about this briefly before, is Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit. My God, they are incredible live. And the fact that I just could sit there and appreciate every single one of their songs was just incredible. Seeing them live was, it was honestly kind of life-changing, I'm not gonna lie. And 2, what are your thoughts on Avril Lavigne's new song, Head Above Water? I'm so ecstatic that one of my favorite musical artists of all time is back. I think the song is great, and I'm really hoping it'll lead to a really great Avril Lavigne project, because it has been a while since I've absolutely loved an Avril Lavigne project from the beginning to end, so I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping I really love it. That's all I'm going to say for now. Lori Kerhinen asks, are you going to do a big-ass record roundup where you get the albums you haven't gotten to this year, or is your rating of Ariana Grande's Sweetener going to stay a mystery? Yeah, this is something that I have been planning, guys. I've thought a lot about this and how best to do it, and what I'm going to actually end up doing is I am going to release free-formed record roundups for the next few weeks. And what I mean by that is that, you know how in retrospective rambles I basically take a song and I talk about it for about 2 minutes? Basically, that's what I'm going to be doing, a non-scripted, quick review of all of the albums that I have talked about, that I have missed talking about this year, some of which you would have already seen my scores for on the mid-year list, but I still want to talk about the albums themselves a little bit more. But yeah, I really, really am looking forward to doing that. And it may be a bit odd, some of you. I'm going to be tagging them 10 at a time, and it's probably going to spread over about 10 videos, and then after that, there are still a few albums that I'm still listening to and still trying to get to before the end of the year. So, as usual, if there are any albums that you think I may have missed from this year, or that you want me to talk about, and I haven't yet listened to them, I will try and do so before the end of the year, and hopefully do, again, a free-form record roundup where I talk about them in bulk. Cryptid asks, I don't know if someone asked this, but what shampoo do you use? I honestly have no idea. That's, I mean, it's probably store brand if I'm being perfectly honest. The problem with having naturally great hair is that you either have to take amazing care of it, and then you get a case like Rodrigo of The Radical Douche, and just have this wonderful mane that just is flowing and glossy. Or you can be like me and just kind of let it do its thing, and it usually ends up looking like an atom bomb, but people still like it, so why complain? Nikki Pruitt asks, what is the album of this year that you most regret not reviewing? Again, I will be talking about it in an upcoming video, but honestly, out of all of them, because there's a lot of them, probably God's Favorite Customer by Father John Misty. I kind of have a sort of relationship with Father John Misty albums on this channel. I remember really loving reviewing Pure Comedy when it came out, and I really wasn't expecting to have another album by him so soon, but that album, it has struck me so personally. It actually made my mid-year list, as some of you may remember, and it's only grown on me since then. But yeah, it struck me really deep, and I'm really hoping to talk about it in a bit more detail very soon. Radical Red Panda, some of these names, God. Really great to see you back, Finn. Thanks, man. I've got 2 questions for you. 1, what genres/years have you been listening to the most? I've listened to a lot of hip-hop this year. I've actually been going back and listening to a lot of the hip-hop that I compiled in top 50 lists for the past few years, and created an ultimate, tried to create an ultimate hip-hop playlist. And it's been interesting. There's a lot of Kendrick Lamar, a lot of Run the Jewels, a lot of Open Mike Eagle. It has been something, believe me. Again, kind of earlier this year, I went back and listened to a lot of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but I will say I spent a lot of the last couple of months listening to 60s music, just revisiting a lot of the Summer of Love, revisiting a lot of the early 60s, the mid 60s. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. 2, what songs do you regret putting on your best or worst lists? Hero by Enrique Iglesias. Can we please move on? Brandon Crocker, hey man, asks, as far as the Q&A goes, what is your favorite film of 2018 thus far? I mean, I'll be honest, other than Bohemian Rhapsody, there's not that much that has really struck me from this year. But I will say, one does come to mind.
Start? I don't feel so good.
Yeah, and also back to, I believe it was James Kavanaugh's question earlier, that is my favorite meme of 2018, right there. JM Garcia asks, new record Roundup, or will you still be doing solo album reviews? Probably going to stick with record Roundup, even if it is just the freeform version. I will do very occasional solo album reviews, but not unless it's something I really have a lot to say about. And might I suggest Paid in Exposure by Nate Wants to Battle. Yes, I will check it out before the end of the year. Thank you. I've made a mental note and also a note on 1 second. There. I've made a note here. I won't forget to listen to it before the end of the year. That's all I can promise. Mike Duggar asks, what are your favorite and least favorite years from each of the following decades? 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. I'm not going to answer yet on the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, sorry, because I still need more time to explore the decades as a whole. I can't give an honest answer right now. But for the 2000s, my least favorite year of the 2000s is probably 2006? No, 2009. 2009. I'm going to stick with 2009. And my favorite year, 2002, not gonna lie, 2002 is probably the strongest year overall of the 2000s. And of the 2010s so far, least favorite, easily 2016, and favorite, 2011. I'm going to stick with 2011. Thomas Augury, sorry buddy, asks, here's a couple of questions. What would you say are the best country hits of the current decade? And what is your opinion on Carrie Underwood, since you've never really talked about her? By the way, I'm so glad there are country fans on this channel that just watch my videos, because whenever I talk about country music, I always feel like I'm going to be so outnumbered, but there's always someone out there, so thank you for that. But anyway, getting off topic. I'm going to say for my favorite hit of the decade, in terms of country music, the first one that springs to mind is Miranda Lambert's Broken Heart, so I'm going to say that. And as for Carrie Underwood, I like Carrie Underwood. I actually have listened to her album Cry Pretty, and I will be talking about it soon, don't worry. I've always struggled with the fact that I like her presence and her voice way more than I like her songwriting and her content. I think she can deliver certain types of songs like no one else, but she's kind of limited in other types of songs. And the fact is, I can't help always comparing her to Miranda Lambert, who in my opinion is just better in almost every way. She's even proved on songs like Mama's Broken Heart that she can be just as fiery as Carrie. But I don't dislike Carrie Underwood. I think she's fine. I think she's just a terrific voice and a great presence who just needs better songwriters and better producers. That's what I'll say. Will Jensen asks, what are your thoughts on Ren and Stimpy? I like it. SpongeBob, haven't seen enough of it, but like what I've seen. Rocko's Modern Life, I feel so bad for Rocco. Ed, Edd and Eddy, yeah, that's cool. Courage the Cowardly Dog, never seen it. Dexter's Lab, never seen it. Samurai Jack, yeah, the best one that you've mentioned so far. And Cow and Chicken, never seen it. Chocolate Zeus, again, love these names, asks, what do you think of the songs that you use in the interludes between each song on your top 10s? Do you think it's a song that falls into the category of the list? Generally, yes. Generally, I like to put in the interlude a song that that does fit the theme of the list. So on the worst hits, it's a song I dislike, and on the best hits, it's a song I like. That was either originally an honorable mention or a dishonorable mention and just got cut, or is just one that I dislike or like, but just not strongly enough to want to put it on either list. But sometimes if I can't find a song that fits that category, I'll just put something that I think sounds good during the transition. That if I'm being perfectly honest. Billboard Guy 1 asks, why were you a Kesha fan back then? Most critics, including professional ones, dismissed her music as pretty much bad and obnoxious until she released Praying. And did you like Blah Blah Blah, which is considered to be her worst song even by a lot of Kesha fans? I did talk about Kesha in a lot more detail when I reviewed her entire discography back in September of 2017. Actually, it was a long time ago. It was before I had decent audio. So if you want more on my Kesha saga, then definitely go check those out, because I'm actually really proud of those reviews. Here's the thing, back in the day, I loved TikTok. I thought it was a great song. And the more I listened to her, the more I kept thinking, well, I shouldn't like this, but it just fits the party vibe I'm after. I definitely didn't see her full potential until a little bit later. It was around when Warrior came out that I really saw her potential. I probably would have seen it on the Cannibal EP, but I never actually checked that out until after I listened to Warrior. But Warrior was when everything changed for me. Warrior in 2012 was when I suddenly realized Kesha is actually kind of amazing. And then of course you have the deconstructed songs where she takes away a lot of the gloss in production, and you see what a wonderful voice she has. And then I read back on her history and realized just what a genius she was, and how just what her entire image was built upon. And yeah, there's a reason I'm a big Kesha fan, and I have been probably since then, since 2012, although I have liked her a lot since 2010. And finally, Mike Music Reviews asks, 1. Girls Like You is currently sitting at number 1. Any thoughts / pent-up emotions you'd like to get out about that? I'd already made an entire video on Girls Like You, and I still have some rage left over for it. But with that said, it's definitely not their worst hits. They've made worse, in my opinion. It's more just the fact that it's such a bland and almost placeholder song that kind of annoys me, and that's why I'm still a little frustrated that it's at number 1. 2, on that note, what is the worst song you've ever heard that went to number 1? I mean, yeah, first one that springs to mind, London Bridge by Fergie. I still can't believe that was a number 1 hit. That is impressive. Although I will say there is another song that went to number 1 this year that is a very strong contender for the number 1 worst song of the year. But again, I will talk about that later. 3, when could we expect a worst songs of 2005 vid? I really want to hear you tear into Daughters, and you will. And again, I will get to 2005 when I get to it. And 4, is God a Woman? Who knows really, but I do like that Ariana Grande song. And that's it. Those are all of your questions, which of course leads me to the thing that all of you were probably waiting for. How come I was gone for so long? And what is in the future of this channel? So first of all, as promised, I will be releasing the Freeform Record Roundup along the next couple of weeks. I will also be releasing a list that I was asked about before, which is the top 10 almost hit songs of 2017. That is in the works, and I promise it will be out before the end of the year. And of course, after that, I will do the year-end list that I talked about earlier. As for why I was gone, there are a couple of factors at play. Starting with, back in July, I was planning to make a new series. I was planning this new show that I was really excited about, and I put so much time and effort into. But the problem was my software, my editing software, kept on crashing on me, and I lost not just a ton of saved stuff, because I'm usually quite good at saving, but a ton of footage. And it just drove me insane, and I just felt so disgruntled. And then the window of time in which I could have released that video expired, and it wouldn't have made sense to release it afterwards. So I'm really sad about that, and that's why you haven't heard about that series. I basically cancelled it because I just can't manage it, honestly, with my current schedule. It's just not possible. And on top of that, there were all the arguments with YouTube. Every single one of my videos was getting flagged. When I posted my video for the best hit songs of 2009, within the hour, I had about nine claims on it, which is ridiculous. 9 claims within the hour. So yeah, YouTube has been frustrating me so much. And I have been arguing back and forth to try and get them to at least just let people just view my videos. I don't even have to monetize them. And as an experiment, that 2009 video that got 9 claims, I didn't monetize it. I didn't. It was then monetized by the claimants once they had made the claim. So even though it wasn't monetized, it's still got all those claims on it, because I honestly don't care about the money. It's one of the reasons why I'll never set up a Patreon, because, and I know that may sound selfish, or that I'm disregarding other people who do ask for money for doing this, but I don't want to make money off of it, because if I make money off of it, I'll start to feel pressure. I'll start to, start relying on it. I just want this as a hobby. That's all I want. I want this to be something I enjoy doing with no monetary stuff required, which is why it annoys me so much when my video is taken down, like with the Best of 1989 video. But yeah, I know that was a bit of a rant there, but yeah, that kind of paired with the fact that I felt so discouraged by losing the opportunity to release that new series. It just bummed me out, and it's why you hadn't seen me for a little while. I just didn't feel motivated. I didn't want to release new content because I was afraid it was going to get taken down, and again, I just didn't feel in the mood for it. And as I've said before, if I don't feel like filming, I'm not going to film, because that'll just be bad for my own mental health, and that's the last thing that I'm sure any of us want. I know that some of you out there, probably somewhere, like maybe one of you is like, I don't care what happens to you, I just want the content. But I know that most of you, especially from all the feedback and kind words I've gotten, most of you actually really care about my content and actually enjoy it, and actually were happy to have me back, which is so cool. I love that I have this little community of 1,100 of you now. I never made a video on that, but yeah, we're at, I think, 1,170 at this point, so that's amazing. That's amazing, guys, and I can't thank all of you enough for that. It's incredible to think that since the last Q&A I've more than doubled in size on this channel. And hopefully we'll gain even more members to our family when we make the year-end lists, but we'll see. In the meantime, like I said, stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. Thank you if you watched all the way to the end of this very free-formed rambling Q&A. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all so much again. Please subscribe so you don't miss a thing if you're not already. And until the next time, I'm Finn, and this is The Social Tunes, signing off.